Have you ever felt like you are pouring your soul into someone, only to realize they see you only as a reflection of themselves? You give them your laughter, your silence, your trembling confessions in the dark, and yet each word comes back twisted, reshaped, returned to you as if it were never your own. It is a strange kind of loneliness, to sit so close to another body and feel as though you are speaking into glass. Picture this: a couple at a small cafe table, rain whispering against the windows. One leans forward, voice soft, speaking about a fear they carry, a weight pressing at the edges of their chest. The other nods, but instead of holding that fragile moment, they turn it back toward themselves. Suddenly, the story is no longer about the one who shared, but about the one who listens. Their pain becomes an anecdote. Their struggle becomes a comparison, their soul becomes swallowed. And as the candle between them flickers, the one who first opened up wonders if they were ever really heard at all. This is the paradox of intimacy with a narcissistic partner. They are magnetic, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. They draw you in with warmth that feels like sunlight, with attention that seems boundless, with promises that you have finally been seen. And yet, the closer you stand to their glow, the more you notice the shadows it casts. Their love feels like suffocation, their devotion like erasure. Every embrace feels heavy with a silent condition. You must not exist except as the mirror that reflects them back to themselves. Psychologists describe this as a failure of empathy, a distortion rooted deep in the architecture of the self. The narcissist does not see the other as a separate being, but as an extension, a surface polished to keep their own image bright. Neuroscience tells us that empathy lights up different regions of the brain, yet for the narcissist, that light flickers faint, as if the circuit has been rewired to protect the fragile self within. The mask they wear gleams with confidence, but behind it is an emptiness too frightening to face. And so you are left in the contradiction, loved but not recognized, held but not cherished, spoken to but never truly heard. It is like pressing your palms against a mirror, desperate for warmth, and finding only the cold echo of your own reflection staring back. What does it mean to love someone who only sees you as a mirror and never as a human being? That question lingers like smoke, leading us deeper into the hidden origins of this hunger for reflection, back to where the mask itself was first forged. Have you ever wondered how a wound so invisible can shape an entire life? Before the mask of confidence, before the charm that dazzles, there was a child small, open, and waiting for love that never came in the form it was needed. Imagine that child standing in the middle of a room, the sound of applause swirling like thunder. Yet inside, they ache for something far quieter. A single, genuine touch, a glance that says, "You are enough, even if you do nothing at all." For some, the cradle itself was empty. Perhaps a mother was present in body, but absent in tenderness, her eyes always elsewhere, her hands busy but never warm. Perhaps a father praised every achievement, but never embraced the child simply for existing. And so the little one learned a dangerous lesson. Love is not given freely, it must be earned, performed, fought for, like air in a suffocating room. Each smile, each gold star, each perfect gesture became a currency to keep abandonment at bay. Picture a boy running across a schoolyard, laughter spilling into the air, yet no one turns their head at the sound. He shouts louder, runs faster, does tricks to catch an eye. Still, the silence swallows him whole. Picture a girl who brings home straight A's, and is met not with affection, but with a cold nod, as if her worth were a report card and nothing more. Slowly, these children stop searching for genuine connection. Instead, they begin constructing a persona, a shimmering surface to hide the hollow space within. Attachment theory tells us that the earliest bonds between child and caregiver shape the blueprint for every relationship to come. When affection is inconsistent, sometimes present, often withdrawn, the child's nervous system becomes a storm, always vigilant, always reaching, never secure. Neuroscientists call it insecure attachment, but for the child, it feels like hunger that never ends. They grow up not with a sturdy sense of self, but with a desperate need to be seen, to be validated, to prove they exist. And so, performance becomes survival. Excessive praise without intimacy inflates a fragile balloon, one that looks grand but is always at risk of bursting. Neglect without comfort carves a cavern, one that can never be filled no matter how much admiration is poured into it. The child becomes both actor and audience, clapping for their own mask because no one else will. This is the soil in which narcissism takes root, not in arrogance, but in absence. It is not born from too much love, but from love given with conditions, from touch that was withheld until the performance was perfect. The empty cradle echoes through adulthood, whispering that the self is not enough, that only the mask will be chosen. From this soil of absence, the narcissist learns to build not a self, but a mask. And behind that mask, the child still waits hungry, unseen, and silent. Have you noticed how some people enter a room and immediately command the air, as if the walls bend toward their presence? They laugh loudly, speak brilliantly, shine with the kind of confidence that seems effortless. To others, they are magnetic, irresistible, the center of every orbit. But what you don't see is the weight of the armor they wear, the golden mask polished so brightly that it blinds both you and them. The wounded child grows into an adult who has learned that survival depends on performance. And so they become radiant. They are the sun at the party untouchable. Blinding, impossible to look away from. Yet, like every star, the radiance is not endless. It burns itself to ash. Beneath the laughter, beneath the charm, there is still the same empty cradle, the same silence echoing where love should have lived. Think of the partner who dominates every conversation, filling it with endless stories of brilliance. You begin to share a thought, a struggle, a memory, but before your words can land, they are already weaving the thread back to themselves. Or, picture the lover who showers you with extravagant gifts. To the world, it looks like devotion, but you feel the hollowness in the gesture. It is not about your joy, it is about the applause, about the audience who claps for their generosity. And so, you smile, you thank them, but inside you wonder, is there any part of me they truly see? To be with a narcissist is to stand before a dazzling mirror that reflects nothing of you. You try to reach out, to be seen, to be held, but all you find is a reflection of their own hunger bouncing back into your face. Your voice dissolves into their performance. Your presence becomes part of their costume. You are there, but unseen. You are close, but erased. Psychology tells us that this is the adult manifestation of a fractured self. What looks like confidence is often a fragile construction designed to keep the truth hidden. The golden mask conceals not arrogance, but fear, the terror of being exposed as unworthy, unloved, insignificant. Neuroscience suggests that even their brains carry this burden. Studies on empathy show weaker responses when confronted with another's pain, while reward circuits flare under admiration. It is not that they don't want to connect, it is that their very architecture has been built around the need to survive, not the freedom to love. And so they keep shining, louder, brighter, harder, until the performance consumes to them. But beneath the glow lies a fragile architecture the brain itself struggles to maintain, a truth that science has only begun to map, and that we, in relationships, feel as a kind of silent starvation. Why does someone who seems so full of themselves often feel so hollow to everyone around them? Why does the partner who craves admiration like oxygen suddenly fall silent when faced with your pain? The answers are not just poetic, they are written into psychology, into brain scans, into the invisible architecture of the self. Narcissistic personality disorder, as described in the DSM-5, is more than vanity or arrogance. It is a pattern of grandiosity, a desperate need for admiration, and a striking lack of empathy. But science tells us the truth is not as simple as calling them selfish, it is the anatomy of a wound. Studies show that what looks like unshakable confidence is often brittle, fragile, easily cracked. Healthy self-esteem allows you to fail without collapsing, to love without fearing loss. Pathological narcissism, however, is built like glass, beautiful, reflective, but always one fracture away from shattering. Neuroscience deepens the picture. In MRI studies, when narcissistic individuals are shown the suffering of others, the regions of the brain tied to empathy light up faintly, as if the current is weak, interrupted. Yet when they receive admiration or recognition, reward circuits fire brightly, the brain flooding with dopamine as though it has found its only source of air. You begin to understand. To them, admiration is not luxury, it is survival. It is the drug that soothes the wound, the mask that keeps the child inside from collapsing under the weight of their own emptiness. Picture the late-night argument. You open your heart, tears welling, voice shaking as you explain how unseen you feel. Instead of comfort, you are met with anger, deflection, or silence. In that moment, their brain is not responding to your pain, it is defending itself against it, retreating to the only strategy it knows: protect the fragile self by refusing to let yours exist. The MRI scan and the late-night fight both reveal the same truth: a hunger that cannot be satisfied, a mask that cannot afford to slip. Psychologists often compare it to a house of mirrors. Every reflection shows the same face, endlessly repeated, yet none reveal what is hidden at the center. The narcissist is trapped in that maze, chasing admiration not because they want to hurt you, but because they cannot survive without it. And still, the cost to you, the partner, the friend, the child of such a parent is profound. This is the paradox science cannot fully solve: how a mind so starved for validation can leave others starving too. How a brain wired to protect itself ends up wounding every soul that dares to love it. And yet, what appears golden on the surface often conceals a darker shadow. What happens when the golden mask no longer glitters, when the charm that once felt intoxicating begins to suffocate? At first, you believe you have stumbled into the arms of someone larger than life, someone who sees you in a way no one else has. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the warmth curdles into coldness. Their affection becomes conditional, their words sharpen into weapons, and love begins to feel less like shelter and more like a battlefield. To love them is to live in a house of mirrors, where every path leads you back to their reflection. You walk through corridors of glass, searching for yourself, only to find your image bent and broken until you can no longer remember who you were before them. One day, you share your pain, something that wounded you, something you hoped they might soothe. They lean forward, eyes heavy with feigned understanding, and then twist the story. Suddenly, you are the cruel one, the selfish one, the ungrateful partner. They apologize without ever saying sorry, turning every argument into a maze where your memory betrays you and your truth feels like a lie. This is gaslighting, one of the most insidious shadows of narcissism. Studies show that repeated invalidation and distortion of memory erode not only trust in others, but trust in your own mind. Your nervous system responds as if to danger, heart racing, muscles tense, sleep fractured by doubt. What should be love becomes a slow dismantling of your reality, a steady reshaping of your soul into something easier for them to control. And then there is withdrawal, the silent punishment that follows whenever you refuse to bend. They retreat, ice cold, as if your very existence is unbearable. Days may pass in silence, your messages ignored, your presence treated like air. Attachment theory explains the terror this silence provokes. When the bond you rely on for safety is threatened, your brain responds as though survival itself is at risk. You begin to chase them harder, desperate to win back their warmth, unaware that this is the very trap they have set. Love, once a garden where you watered each other, now feels like a prison whose walls you helped build. You replay arguments in your head at night, searching for the moment you went wrong, promising yourself that if you just love them harder, give them more, they will return to the person you first met. But the truth is, that person was only ever the mask. The devotion you give becomes fuel for the very destruction that erases you. It is a haunting paradox, how something that begins in adoration can end in erasure, how love itself can become the battlefield where your identity is slowly sacrificed. And yet, as tragic as this shadow is, there is an even deeper question. Why does society so often reward the very traits that destroy intimacy? Have you noticed how the very qualities that leave you feeling unseen in private are celebrated in public? Confidence, charm, the art of curating an image, these have become not just admired, but worshipped. We live in a culture that rewards performance over authenticity, spectacle over substance. And in this world, the narcissist does not simply survive, they thrive. Scroll through your phone and you'll see it everywhere. Smiling faces framed in perfect light, every moment staged to suggest a life of endless beauty, power, and control. Social media has become a cathedral of self-mythology, each post another brick in the temple of the idealized self. For the narcissist, this is not just expression, it is oxygen. Every like, every comment, every fleeting heart on a screen becomes a substitute for the affection they cannot sustain in silence. And for those who love them, it becomes more confusing. How can someone adored by so many leave you feeling so invisible? History tells the same story on a grander scale. Leaders rise to power not only through vision, but through image. Charisma has toppled reason, spectacle has overruled truth. From emperors who carved their faces into stone to modern icons who live as brands, society has long mistaken the mask for the person beneath it. A loud voice is heard as wisdom. A carefully staged smile is mistaken for virtue. We fall in love not with human beings, but with projections of greatness. And when you stand beside a partner who embodies these traits, you are told to be grateful, as if you have been chosen by someone brighter than yourself. Philosophers warn us of this inversion of values. Nietzsche wrote of the herd's tendency to worship appearances, while Jung reminded us that the shadow grows darkest when unacknowledged. Yet culture continues to reward those who shine, even if the light burns everyone closest to them. In relationships, this conditioning runs deep. You are taught to endure, to fix, to stay, because to be loved by someone who dazzles is seen as fortune, even if behind closed doors that love feels like slow erosion. And so the narcissist is not only protected by their mask, but reinforced by the world around them. Friends admire their confidence. Colleagues respect their ambition. Strangers envy their life. Meanwhile, you live with the silence between words, with the subtle cruelties that never make it to the stage. You learn to doubt your own suffering because everyone else sees only the shine. But every mask eventually cracks, and when it does, the cost is devastating. What happens to you when love becomes the very place where you are most unseen? The cost is not always loud or dramatic. It is subtle, silent, creeping into your nights and mornings until you no longer recognize yourself. At first, you think it's just another argument, just another moment you'll get past. But then you find yourself lying awake, replaying the words over and over, searching for the moment you went wrong. Sleep slips from you, leaving only the heavy quiet of the dark, and in that silence, your soul feels heavier than your body. You begin to live as though the floor is made of glass. Every word must be measured, every step careful, for fear of the explosion that might come. Anxiety becomes a constant hum beneath your skin, your nervous system locked in vigilance. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, an adaptation of the brain when it senses ongoing threat. But here the threat is not war or disaster. it is love. The very person who should be your refuge becomes the one you fear upsetting most. And then comes the weight of invisibility. Depression doesn't arrive all at once. It drips in slowly, like water eroding stone. At first, it's a sigh you don't notice, a laugh that doesn't come as easily. But soon, your voice grows softer, your shoulders heavier, your joy harder to find. Imagine a woman once radiant, her smile filling rooms. Over years, the smile fades, replaced by practiced silence. She walks beside her partner, but feels more like a shadow, following their footsteps. Or a man who once spoke his dreams openly, now pausing before every word, unsure if his truth will be twisted or ignored. This is the slow starvation of the soul, the erosion of selfhood in the name of keeping love alive. Attachment theory explains this cruelty well. The human need to be seen and held by another is as vital as food or water. When that need is met with indifference or distortion, the brain reads it as abandonment. You do not simply feel lonely, you feel erased. It is as if you are standing on the stage of your own life, but the spotlight never turns toward you. You are present, but unacknowledged. You are speaking, but your voice never echoes back. To love a narcissist is to slowly erase yourself from the story until you become a ghost in your own life. You still cook meals, still send messages, still smile in photographs, but inside you fade. And yet, ghosts can awaken, and even in the ruins, healing is possible. How do you heal when love itself has become the wound? When the one place you sought safety has turned into a battlefield of shadows and mirrors? The first step is not dramatic, not loud. It begins in the quiet recognition that what you are living is not love, but survival dressed in its costume. You notice the pattern, the way arguments twist until you doubt your own memory, the way apologies come without ownership, the way silence becomes a weapon. To see this is to pierce the mask, to recognize manipulation for what it is rather than what it pretends to be. From that recognition comes the harder truth. You cannot fix what was never yours to fix. The narcissist's mask was built long before you entered their story, and no amount of love can dismantle a structure forged in childhood wounds. The science of attachment makes it clear when someone has learned that intimacy equals danger, they will protect themselves by controlling you. To believe you can rewrite their history with your devotion is to stand before an endless mirror, hoping your reflection will finally change. It will not. Instead, the path is one of reclamation. Boundaries become more than rules, they become lifelines. To say no without guilt is to remind yourself that you are not a prop in their performance, but a being with your own center. It is frightening at first, because the silence that follows your boundary may feel like abandonment. Yet in truth, it is the opposite. It is you stepping back into your own life, reclaiming space that was always yours. Therapists call this individuation, the process of separating your sense of self from the distortions imposed on you. Journaling can help, as can therapy, as can the presence of those who see you not as a mirror, but as a soul. Each word you write, each story you tell honestly, each moment of being believed, becomes an act of stitching your fractured identity back together. And slowly, you begin to see yourself again, not as the echo of someone else's needs, but as a person whose worth does not depend on applause or approval. You take back the mirror not to see them, but to finally see yourself. Your laughter returns, hesitant at first, then stronger. Your body feels lighter, no longer bracing for the storm of their moods. You begin to remember what it feels like to exist without fear. This path is not about revenge or even about them at all. It is about you, about the life you rebuild from the ashes of confusion, about the freedom that comes when you no longer mistake control for love. And in seeing yourself, you discover a truth as old as philosophy itself. The narcissist builds a mask of gold, but love cannot live in a mask. Love lives only in truth. And that is the quiet paradox you come to understand, often only after your soul has been starved of the intimacy it deserved. You believed the mask was the person, The brilliance was the love, the performance was the promise. But in the silence that follows, you see it for what it was. Armor forged not to protect you, but to shield the fragile child still hiding within them. Carl Jung once wrote that the shadow we refuse to face becomes the AP4 fate we are forced to live. The narcissist, terrified of their own emptiness, casts that shadow onto you. You become the bearer of their projections, the scapegoat for their fears, the mirror that reflects what they dare not see. Yet the truth is older than psychology and deeper than theory. What is denied within will always distort what is given without. Nietzsche warned us about masks too. He said that whoever fights monsters must take care not to become one, and that when you gaze long into the abyss gazes back. To live with someone who wears a mask is to be drawn into that abyss, to begin questioning your own face, your own worth, your own reflection. You risk becoming a shadow of yourself, forgetting that you were whole long before you were ever reflected in their gaze. And still, philosophy reminds us that there is light beyond this labyrinth. Rumi wrote of the soul not as something earned, but as something eternal. You are not a drop in the ocean, he said. You are the entire ocean in a drop. To remember this is to step outside the hall of mirrors, to stand once more in your own presence without the need for validation from someone who could never give it. Healing is not about breaking their mask, it is about refusing to live inside it any longer. When you strip away the performance, what remains is not the grandeur, but the simple truth. Love cannot be sustained by illusion. It cannot be fed by applause or polished by image. Love breathes only where vulnerability exists, where the soul dares to stand naked without costume, without pretense, without the safety of control. And if that is denied, then what you had was not love, but the echo of love, hollow and shimmering. So you step out of their mirror, and in doing so, you realize the truth you had forgotten. You were never unworthy of love. You were simply unseen by the one too afraid to see themselves.